Men, why do you hide your feelings? Story 1. Because you can't fix it. I don't have the energy to start to dive into why I'm not fine when I know there is no resolution. I just consistently get one-upped as a response, almost every time. Rough day at work, I'm an OBGYN, so manage the issues of approximately 25 women per day. Pregnancy lost at least once a day, general psych therapy several times a day. If I have a particularly rough day and convey that to my SO, somehow it turns into a minute-by-minute dissertation of her day, which started by waking up at 3 a.m. the night before for no good reason, kids forgetting a homework assignment and not realizing it until morning, dogs peeing on a rug, cars out of gas, various friend dramas going on, etc. It's not worth it. It's not a competition. We've fought about it numerous times over the last 30 years. I usually just concede to end the discussion, and she does eventually apologize after a few hours of self-reflection. But for the most part, I don't open up about my bad days or other life stressors anymore because I don't want to risk it turning into that again. I do have a code now that I'll give my wife when I'm on my way home after a particularly bad day, like really tragic stuff, which basically indicates that I'm going to come home, be a good husband and dad, help with dinner, homework, sports, bedtime, and don't want to talk about my day unless I bring it up, and most importantly, don't want to hear anything bad about your day in an attempt to one-up me. I wish this wasn't such a common phenomenon, but it's practically universal among my male friends and colleagues, so that's the life we live, and that's why we love the words "I'm fine" so much. Pretty much this. What are you going to do about it? Is this going to help me, or is it going to just be a pain in my ass and possibly make more problems? It's kind of annoying to even get that question from someone unwilling and or unable to help in any significant way. Not that I'm always moping and down on myself, blaming everyone around me for my problems or anything, just when there's actually trouble that isn't easy to get out of. Story 2. Because I think most believe that nobody really gives a crap. This is the answer. Nobody outside of my mother and one friend cares about any answer other than I'm good. You tell your girl you're feeling down, congrats. She now doubts your strength and ability to lead, and she's lost respect for you. You tell a coworker or boss, as if they could give even one crap. Friend group, unless you're really close, none of them want to hear it and bring down the good vibes. So I keep it to myself. The last thing I need when I'm struggling mentally is to have the people in my life leave or change because I told them that. When I tell you what's wrong, how can you help? You can't and don't really want to unless it's surface level. From experience, if I say anything other than, "Nah, I'm good, thanks," and I really start talking about it, the standard reaction is panic in their eyes, followed by a realization that they wish they never asked. They all want us to open up, and once we do, they're like, "Whoa, not like that." Story 3. Anything I say can and will be used against me. This is so true. I once told my wife, now ex-wife, that I was having suicidal ideation and I think I needed to see a therapist. During our divorce, she used that to try to say I was unfit to parent. Luckily, the judge saw through it. I'm not opening up to anyone for any reason now. Society and women supposedly allow men to be more sensitive and vulnerable, but deep down we're still expected to be men, to be strong and withstand everything. For me, admitting weakness will often later be used against me to criticize my lifestyle, my choices, etc. You can't handle X because remember how 6 months ago you collapsed? I didn't. I just shared my fears with you and cried for 3 minutes. You get comforted in the moment, but it will be back to haunt you. Also, deep down, most women still find it a turnoff when we show weakness. Deny it all you want. I cannot freaking agree more. You've hit all the points. They want us to be open and vulnerable and share stuff. When you take a leap of faith, drop the old self, and share your inner child, you only later find out that it's being used against you. It is being used to show how weak you are, and how you're not the one they desired. When they vent, it should be understood. When we vent, we're instantly judged, and it exhausts them. Screw me. I despise being born a male since I had to go through this crap again and again. Reminds me of my ex. I paid for everything for like the first 6 months. Finally, I put my foot down about going out for dinner during the week and was asking me about what was wrong. I was like, "I'm going broke paying for 2 people's meals while you've been eating for free for half a year." We stayed together another 6 months, but everything changed that day. She started wanting to go out with her friends and needing space and crap. It was pretty clear I was just a convenience for her. I've just realized that is all we ever are for some people. I wasted so much of my life being a convenience for someone who never really cared about me the same way I cared for them. Now that I'm older and have decided that I'd rather be alone than go through that crap again, I'm told I'm wrong and a woman hater because I don't want to go for another round. Solitude is far better than sleeping next to someone who makes you feel alone. I finally have friends again and have reconnected with extended family. I also have something to show for my hard work. My paychecks used to evaporate. I now live and eat better than I have in decades, and I have money left over at the end of every month. Story 4. If I started saying what's wrong, I don't know when I'd stop. A lot of people would feel bad, and I'd most certainly feel worse. Sometimes not talking is better. As someone who fell for the "you should open up more" thing for a long time, I also found that constantly complaining just adds fuel to the fire. A lot of the time, all you need to do is stop making the problem bigger than it really is and give it some time, and focusing on it by complaining just becomes a habit. Complaining is a self-indulgent activity that just spreads negativity to whoever is listening. It never really lessened mine. Everything will change in time, and you can pretty much always just put your head down and keep going and it will be okay. Edit. Yes, bottling it up isn't good either, which is why it's important to learn how to let go of that energy. Journaling is good. Meditation is good. Just letting go is good. Lots of good options. Absolutely, the capacity to churn is just like patience, and patience is just like willpower, which is just a muscle. The more you do it and practice it, the better you get at it. There's actually a recent study that showed that venting about a problem doesn't actually help, and the stimulation actually makes most people more upset. Also, as a general caretaker kind of person, it gets really exhausting being there for my friends and family who are constantly negative. I've been there, so I feel like I want to be the person I wish I had during that time, but honestly, it's a fine line between helper and enabler. I don't think most people realize that focusing on the negative and venting actually brings both parties down. People who want to hear about your issues also want to empathize with you. It's impossible for things to be perfect. I'd rather focus on the next step of the marathon, not how many hills are left. I'm currently one-manning a home remodel, and I didn't finish in time for my family to move in before Christmas. It's a tough holiday season for me after trying to get everyone excited to move earlier this year. 2 little kids are hard to convince that change is good, so I tried to keep the focus on the holidays on the new home. I failed, but really my subcontractors failed, but I'm the face of this project for my family. I can compartmentalize, some can't. Story 5. Because if I tell you I'm not fine, it inexplicably somehow turns into me trying to comfort and reassure you. No, it's not because of you. No, I'm not mad that you thought this was all about you. Well, you shouldn't feel guilty. I'm sorry that you're upset now. Of course I still love you. I'm sorry for upsetting you, honey. No, I promise I'm fine. Everything is perfect. Just had to drop my closest female friend. Everything that I was open about was just simply used as a weapon against me. For example, if I said I have anxiety, she would list 10 examples of how anxious she was. And I ended up sucking up what I said and brainstorming solutions on how to fix her life, because apparently she was triggered and it was suddenly my responsibility to comfort her. Enough was enough. I don't want to overgeneralize and say all women are like this, but she certainly was. I dropped a very dear female friend like 10 years ago. I was homeless, just crashing on couches until I could find somewhere I could afford to rent, which was becoming difficult. She told me I could move in with her and sleep in her living room for a few months. I stopped looking for apartments and started getting ready to move in. When I called her to ask when I could start bringing my stuff over, she said, "Oh, I didn't actually mean that you could move into my place. I just thought you needed someone to say something nice to you." I recently broke up with a partner of 3 years because, especially toward the end, anytime I would bring up any negative feelings or concerns, rarely, calmly, she would get insecure, explosively angry, and/or teary. I couldn't take the anger and yelling anymore. I'm trying to become a man who can talk about his feelings and needs, and I don't need someone imploding and/or exploding whenever I try to come out of my shell. Every time I've opened up about my struggles to a partner, spouse, or woman friend at best, I get to console whoever I'm talking to because the life I carry on through every day was too much for them for 5 minutes of story time, and I have to raise their spirits back up. And at worst, it becomes all about them and how I can see how my venting or expressing how I feel makes them feel like crap. And suddenly I'm on the defensive doing damage control just to try to explain how I feel. Multiply this by 1000% if it's over text. No idea why, but despite being a calming and relaxing presence in their lives, when I vent over text, they immediately assume my tone is hostile or spiteful. When face to face or on the phone, they'd hear how calm I was or my voice breaking to know I'm not mad. I'm just not okay. The most random example of this I've ever encountered was when I was involved in a car accident. I was stationary at a traffic light on a roundabout. A stupid invention. I've never thought traffic lights on roundabouts were anything but the dumbest idea. Control flow onto the roundabout if you need, but once you're on it, don't stop the traffic for any reason. The accident merely reinforced that belief, but I digress. Anyway, I was stationary and a car rear-ended me at 30 miles per hour. It was only because her car went under my boot that the impact was reduced to only shoving me forward a few meters, and completely flattening the spare wheel well from underneath and causing enough cosmetic damage to result in the car being an economic write-off. I'm the one who had to drive my car off the road, then grab a witness to help me push her car off the road, then comfort her until she was fit to exchange details. Then she needed an ambulance because she was having a meltdown. She's the one who was driving without due care and attention. Why was it me who was looking after her? And then her father wanted me to not go through insurance. I even got very mild whiplash for a few days. Seriously, every relationship I've ever had where I've opened up ended up with them absorbing what I'm saying and then thinking that I feel that way because of them. They internalized my problems and then they think it's their fault somehow, even if it's unrelated to them entirely. And then when you don't speak up about it, the same thing. In their head, they make up scenarios where you're mad at them or whatever. But it's always about them and the relationship in their minds, even if it's not. Sometimes we just wanna, yeah, I agree, that sucks. How can I help and what can I do to support you? Story 6. Because nobody really cares. One huge difference I noticed between men and women is that women often seem to feel better if they talk about it. Men typically only feel better if something's actually done about it. Women often think that they are doing something useful by listening to problems when quite often the men actually want something done about the problem. The irony and worst part is the opposite scenario for women. Women often just want a man to listen, but the man wants to act and get something done to solve the problem. For whatever reasons, women and men seem to never understand this different dynamic about each other and act accordingly. I think a good group of friends always cares, but guys in general are so bad at handling emotions. My father unexpectedly passed away a few years ago. I ended up being the emotional rock for my family. I had been pretty aware of the potential consequences of his recent medical state, while other members of my family had been in denial, so the passing hurt them that much more. I was pretty put together with it, but overall, still had a bit of grief to work through. Only 2 of my buddies understood that just listening to the passing thoughts and feelings I had over the next few weeks was all I needed. The rest of my friend group treated it like an alien experience. Many of them said, "I'm sorry that happened," and avoided the topic for fear of not knowing what to say. One went the route of thinking I needed constant distraction from what happened. One of my buddies got angry with me because I told him that I had a long day with funeral plans and didn't want to discuss it at the time. Had I not understood at the time that Dingus didn't know how to handle a conversation like that, I wouldn't have shut him down so nicely. And this was just a very common life event. Discussing life aspirations, love, and morality has always been avoided or met with no depth with most of my guy friends. To expand on this, society as a whole doesn't really care about men's problems. Well, they do care, kinda. But that caring quickly stops the moment it becomes inconvenient, or the moment that those problems conflict with something else that society deems more valuable. If the problems men experience threaten to take the spotlight away from something else, then it is quickly dropped, or even worse, attacked. There is a reason International Women's Day receives the backing and support of mainstream media/corporations, while International Men's Day goes by completely ignored by those groups year after year. Has Google ever done a doodle for IMD? There's a reason why breast cancer research receives insane amounts of funding compared to prostate cancer research, despite the mortality rate of the latter being higher. Last time I checked at least, I don't have statistics on hand. It's not a competition, of course, but it very quickly seems to become one, whenever it's men trying to get their problems to be heard. A lot of men naturally give up trying because it's become obvious to them that nobody cares. Men have always been, and will likely always be, seen as disposable, and it's natural to not care much for the well-being of things that are disposable. Story 7. My entire life as a man, I've been taught 2 things. I need to be coming up with solutions to problems, and if I'm not useful, I'm useless. The moment I ask for help or show that I need help with a certain problem rather than being the one helping with a problem, I am then regarded as the problem. When I am the problem, I'm not useful. See above. Doesn't take a genius to see that vicious cycle unfold into some serious mental issues. Like it or not, that second lesson is the truth. You're worthless if you can't provide value. If you're lucky, 0.01% of the people you meet will care about you as a person, even when you're not providing value. If you doubt that, imagine how long it would take with you unemployed and disabled before those around you started to resent you. I'm not a young pup anymore. It took me forever to learn how to ask for help, and I still don't when I should. Help for tasks or knowledge, not mental burden. Learn to ask for help, but in a way that highlights you valuing the person's expertise and knowledge. It's amazing how much you can strengthen ties and learn new crap as you go along. Yep, this is something I'm still continuing to unlearn on my personal self and career. Once I learned that it is okay to ask for help, I made a lot of money working in a consulting career. Something I learned again when I went back to a Buddhist temple, and the local monk told me along the lines of the following: there are so many hours in a day and so many days to live through the day. It may look like a lot with numbers, but it really isn't a lot of time. People work together because we are not good at everything and there is not enough time to learn everything. You are not alone in this world. Just like your parents and teachers help you by teaching you how to live in this world, you will be another person helping other people by teaching them how to live in this world. It's a long chain that is passed down from one generation to another over time. Once you get your help, you become the person who can help others, and they will become the person who can help others. To not help can be a negative quality. Greed. Funny enough, I do not respond, "I'm fine" anymore. I just responded, "It's whatever," or "Are you hungry or thirsty?" Because no matter how bad our day is, good food is good. Story 8. Because our vulnerability is often weaponized against us. And worst of all, it's usually someone who wants us to be vulnerable. My ex was like this. I'd talk about how I felt, and it wound up making her angry. It became about her, or redirected to things I was supposedly doing wrong, as though my emotions were somehow a blame or criticism of her and she needed to even the game. It wasn't, and I wound up, as others have said, needing to placate, backtrack, and get back onto the "I'm fine, shouldn't have mentioned it" train. God forbid it actually was something she was doing that was causing distress. Bringing it up would end with, "Well, I guess we should just break up." No, let's just work on working together. No? Okay, I apologize, I'll do better, sorry. Every time I was the one trying to diffuse and get back on track. We worked together, willing to concede, surrender my emotions, and let it go in favor of trying to balance us again. Every single time. She seemed incapable of that, and talking about when I was going through negative emotions only ever turned into a conversation about her or what I was doing wrong. I recall a time she said something like, "What's wrong?" I said I was depressed, and she said that was frustrating and tiring and she was over having to deal with it. That I was the problem for feeling like that. Made me never want to talk with her about it. When it wasn't even about her. Nearly 8 years and it didn't work out. Which I knew she'd never change earlier, or rather accepted she wouldn't. There are girls out there who aren't like that. You know the saying, your money is her money and her money is her money? Your problems are your problems and her problems are your problems. Basically, she, like many other modern women, look at men as security objects. You are not a person but a symbol of her security and safety. Imagine you're the president and you hire a bodyguard. That bodyguard tells you, "I'm depressed." You might be wondering, okay, well, you're supposed to protect me. You can't do your job and now I'm worried about myself. Or if you're a kid, imagine your parents telling you they're scared they might get fired. Now you're worried about being kicked out if your parents can afford school. If you will even have money for Christmas presents. This is basically how women look at men when they're in a relationship. They often don't really care, they just want to know that everything is okay because you're their security object. Story 9. Because growing up I was pressured to not express any feelings and to suck it up. I think this is the most widely applicable response. People care, but not enough. It really is just what we're taught. I hope that as a society we can stop putting that pressure on people, especially men. Note, I'm a woman who happened to be raised this way by a woman who was very much stoic and held in everything like many men are taught to do. So I get it, but I know it's not quite the same, as that specific pressure was only put on me by family and not society as a whole. I didn't have a father to teach me to suck it up. I had to learn the hard way that the ones who say they want you to be emotional actually don't, and only act like they do. Then they act like you are the problem. I was at the peak of my emotional phase and it was absolute hell. I was lucky enough at 21 to work with a man who became a father figure and taught me control. But from puberty until then, I was raised by women who had no idea what it's like to live as a man. It's a cruel truth. Story 10. People don't actually want to hear about your problems. They say they do because they feel obligated to give a socially acceptable answer. Men are still held to anachronistic gender roles. It's worse. In fact, many sincerely want to hear about your problems, but only to put it on you and to make themselves feel better about their own life. A fresh personal example: the engine died a week ago in our family car. Oh, your car broke? So how do you manage it with kids or without the car? Why didn't you arrange an inspection in a workshop? Oh, you did? But maybe it was the wrong workshop? Did you do this or that? Dude, just buzz off. I'm good. Thanks. The biggest failure most feminists run into in describing the issues that patriarchy enables is that they stop at the effects only for women. In reality, both men and women suffer under patriarchy. It's just that the severity and outcomes are so much different. Men can suffer under patriarchal expectations. It just manifests as a completely different beast. For the record, yes, women get it much worse, not going to argue that. It doesn't erase the pain that many men go through, though, when they are not meeting the expectations society puts on them. Story 11. A lot of men say they're fine even when they're not because it's easier than opening up, especially in situations where they feel like they might be judged or don't want to seem vulnerable. It's often about avoiding conflict or being perceived as strong or in control. Society sometimes encourages men to bottle things up, which makes it harder to admit when they're struggling. It's a learned behavior, but more people are recognizing the importance of being honest about their emotions. Very well said. Men are taught to not open their emotions up. When women open up about their emotions, they tend to not want to be given solutions, but want to be listened to and felt heard and cared for. So we learn to be supportive in this way. We also learn that confidence is what is attractive. Women are drawn to security. So when a man is asked to open up and become vulnerable, this is what happens. First, the man isn't necessarily good at opening up and processing, so there is some deep sensitivity that opens up and it may not be stable. We are opening up stuff that women tend to deal with day in and day out and clear out better than we do, so what we're opening up to may seem like a lot, and it makes us seem like we are making a big deal about something that a woman has learned to deal with many times over and not think about as much. Second, the woman is now in the support role, the role of being a stable rock for her man, confident and supportive, being present and hearing what he has to say. If she tries to find solutions or ask him why he doesn't do this or that, not only is it the same thing that happens when a man tries to do this to a woman, but it's all happening in a more vulnerable state. This can lead to the woman feeling at a loss for how to be supportive, feeling like her suggestions are not being helpful, and then for her own emotions to become affected, leading the man to fall back into the role of supporting her, letting her know it'll be okay. Down the road, that vulnerability represents weakness and instability. The woman may feel that her man isn't the rock she thought he was and may be surprised that behind his confidence and stable heart is an ocean of emotions he is inept at tapping into and working with, which is a weakness. He may not feel confident and sexy to her anymore. For some women, the loss of the feeling that her partner is that stable, confident rock then makes him less attractive to her. In multiple threads like this, we have seen many reports of men who have opened up and been vulnerable, and then she left him because of it. So, in the end, the takeaway is that if men are going to be open and vulnerable with women, we need to understand how to do gender role reversals. And I think it is absolutely, hugely important for men to open up their emotions and start getting experience with vulnerability. Because that vulnerability can be turned into a strength, we just have to learn to work in a space that we don't have experience with. Once we're open, it isn't about getting overwhelmed by feeling, it's about listening to what that feeling is communicating to us so that we can process it and empty it out. Then we can be both open and clear, and that gives us more room to support our partners with confidence. When we are empty of our own stuff, we can really show up. But better yet, because our hearts are open, we are much more present for connection and able to really take the other in. In the end, the divine masculine and divine feminine are simply the masculine learning to embrace its own femininity and the feminine learning to embrace its own masculinity, which is simply balance, divinity. But in relationships, we like being two parts of a whole rather than just one whole that shares with another whole. The more we are able to understand how to be the whole within ourselves, the more we are able to summon the part of ourselves that is needed to show up for another. If that part of ourselves is undeveloped, then it can't meet the other. If both people try to connect with undeveloped skills, we quickly learn that it doesn't work so well, but that just means we have something to work on. Story 12. Because nobody actually cares whether I am or not. Nobody wants to hear it if I'm not. They just want to hear I'm fine so they can go on about their day with the knowledge that everything is right as rain. I think you have to be very selective about who you open up to. Sometimes you can test the waters with someone and see how they react before really opening up to them. There have been a few people in my life I could really open up with, but yeah, most people don't give a crap and just use it against you or start treating you differently. Story 13. Evidence of me not being fine will be used against me. Setting doesn't matter in my experience. One of my grandparents died during high school. I was very close with them. A year later, I was still not doing great, and the other kids were calling me an emo wuss to my face, and two of my teachers yelled at me to move on and participate in class. I was still doing great in school, just didn't care to engage with others much. In grad school, for the health field, a close family member had a serious health condition and I thought they were going to die, so I tried working remotely. This was years before COVID, but it was fine. Yes, my work quality suffered, but was still generally good. It amounted to an extra round or two of edits on papers. I thought we were good since they stressed balance and mental health since we are in the health field. Well, someone didn't like it and wanted me in the office. The chair rolled their eyes at me and said, if you can't handle your personal problems, I don't think a career in research is for you. Do you even want to be here? What is especially infuriating about my grad school experience is that a student had free rein to take a few weeks off after her cat died. I have more stories like the above. Damn, nearly every man I know has, and it sucks. Having people not give a crap would be an improvement. Same thing. My female colleague's cat died 2 weeks ago. My mom died, and I got 3 days, and one of them they had to give me but didn't want to and vocally stressed that to my face because it was the funeral. I'm not at that job anymore, but it definitely killed my whole career in that sector, education, for better or worse. I took half a day for my father's funeral. On the day of the funeral, I came in and did my morning work and then had people try to keep me from leaving, as their problems were more important than me showing up on time to my father's funeral. It was only really because I told them that I needed to be there for my mother and sister that they finally let me go. I returned after I put my father in the ground to finish the day's work. I'm fine. Story 14. 1. We can't fix it. You can't fix it. I can't fix it. Whatever it is, we don't have the means, knowledge, experience, or connections to fix the problem. 2. We don't want to cause ripples. By saying we are not fine, it opens the door to us venting potentially unwanted insight into our mental state. Insights that could harm your perception of us, kill the mood or vibe about us, cause people to view us differently, and isolate us from the few social connections that we have. 3. You don't need ammo. Very often, almost comically often, when we do open up about how not fine we are, women will remember it and use it as a metaphorical low blow in an argument. Don't say, I would never, that's so mean, I can't believe you would think that, because you do. You always do. So to save us all the trouble and keep things par for the course, we are fine. Story 15. In my experience, giving voice to my problems invites others to examine my life and try to figure out why they are my own fault. If only I was more like them, I would not have these problems. If my friends suck, I just need to go to Friend Mart and get new ones. If my job sucks, I just need to go to one of those $140K a year jobs off the top shelf at Job Mart. If my health is bad, it's because I drink milk, or don't drink milk, or eat meat, or don't eat meat. Drink coffee, or drink tea, or eat sugar, or eat aspartame, or am on a keto diet, etc. If I'm depressed, I need to cheer up and exercise more. clean the house, or sunbathe. If I'm fat, it's because I lack willpower and sneak out when no one is looking to scarf down 2 large Pizza Hut pies a day. If I'm skinny, it's because I lack willpower and give in to societal pressure to starve myself or purge after eating. The lack of energy is just me being lazy. Why would I be sick? They've not been sick a day in the last 20 years. Except the 4 times a year that they're forgetting about. They just think it, and they don't get sick. I must not be thinking well thoughts hard enough. Don't worry about dying, I'll go to a better place if I've been a good person. I hate people right now. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you want to share with us, please leave it down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. We have plenty. Thanks again, and see you next time.